Hi, I'm Tina Hill. You're watching My Life with Tina, and today's guest is Ms. Minty Newport, superstar burlesque dancer. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad you can join. So burlesque in New York is alive and well,
It is. There's a huge scene in New York. It's become more and more popular over probably the last 10 years, and there's every kind of burlesque you can imagine. So yeah, it's great. I am actually a trained actor. So I went to school for acting in a conservatory type program. I studied the classics. So, you know, my background is in drama and theater. And I actually wound up about 4 years ago being asked to do a play, which was about a burlesque dancer. So during that show, that was really my first introduction to burlesque. I had seen burlesque in New York, as you do, if you're around a while. But to really get into the world of the character, both myself and the other lady in the show, we took burlesque courses, and we did an actual burlesque show. And after that, I was pretty hooked. A burlesque name is a really important thing.
does it need to be kitschy or?
Kitschy is a popular option. There are certain kind of classic combinations of words. Ms. Minty Newport came from Newport cigarettes, which I don't smoke. I don't smoke at all. And so I thought, I don't know, when you put Ms. Minty and Newport together, it sounds kind of fancy, but then it's kind of silly, that reference to cigarettes. And I just liked it, and it stuck.
Are there parts that a burlesque dancer must or usually keeps covered? What about the tassels?
It depends
and all
on where
that?
you are, and it depends on the venue, but normally...
Is it what part of the United States you are, or what country you're in? Or?
Yes. I mean, I don't
Yes
know all
and yes.
the local or national, ordinances, but yes, I know it varies. And I think it might even vary from place to place. In fact, I know it does. But basically, a burlesque performer will strip down to pasties and a G-string. Most places would require that be the most nude that you get. There's also something called a merkin.
What is that?
A merkin is something that is a pretty ancient invention, and it is basically a wig for your lady parts.
What?
So, for instance, in the 18th century when...
Where would one find one of those?
Well, you might make one. A lot of burlesque dancers make a lot of things, but there are places to get these things.
Okay.
Online. There are places that you can get all kinds of stripper/burlesque gear. But
that would be, so if you made one or bought one, a merkin, that would be considered covering the body part, even though it looks like the body part?
Yeah,
okay.
and that's a funny thing. They actually came out of, the 18th century and before that, when, and this is really a gross sort of thing, but when people had problems with lice and other issues, so they'd shave the area and then cover it up to make it look real. Okay. And nowadays burlesque performers have a lot more fun with it. I mean, it might be completely made out of Swarovski crystals, it's more upscale.
That's a fancy dancer.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a certain body type of a burlesque dancer, or is it anything goes, or are more different shapes more popular with men and women, or the audience, or?
Well, I think burlesque in New York and other places, burlesque nowadays, generally speaking, is very inclusive of many different body parts. Body shapes. Definitely all the parts. But I think that especially in neo-burlesque, which is a term that I will
You'll have to explain
define
later.
I think that there's especially a lot of room for all sorts of body shapes. You will find very, very thin, very muscular, very big. I mean, people who have certain disabilities, people who do not conform to a gender role. So yes, it's very inclusive of all types of bodies.
Because you
generally
would think,
speaking.
kind of going back to the stripper, like a stripper has a specific body type, and also you think of them having fake boobs and all of that. But burlesque have a lot of that, or it's more about the natural body?
Again, I mean, because of the nature of stripper being a salesperson, there are, I think, standards for what people, quote unquote, for what people expect to see in strip clubs, what men,
what sells,
and what particularly men want to see.
Okay.
And that's another difference. The stripping is driven by male fantasy, and burlesque is more inclusive to everybody's fantasy.
So is the audience, an audience for burlesque, is it a lot of female too? Is it 50-50 or it's mixed? Or?
Absolutely. There's tons of women. There's often bachelor parties for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of couples on dates. So yes.
What do you think is the biggest misperception of burlesque dancing, of people who don't know too much? Is there any kind of preconceived notion of what burlesque dance is and it really isn't, or an old-fashioned view of what burlesque is?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of any misconceptions that I had. Having lived in New York for a long time, I was exposed to it. I'd been to shows. I don't know. I think the stripping versus burlesque thing, even though we've talked about some of the differences, I think people, when they approach me after they've heard that I'm a burlesque performer, seem to think that I'd be much more concerned about them knowing that I'm not a quote-unquote stripper, when in fact, I really don't care.